With over 400 celebrity interviews and tons of pop culture nerdiness, Too Opinionated is a safe haven for your inner geek. Find us at meistercon.com or on YouTube under MeisterCon Pod. And please subscribe. It would really help us out. Thanks, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Too Opinionated. Really excited today. I've got author Mitali Perkins with me. So welcome, Mitali.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's good to be here.
I have to tell you, you are such a good writer. My wife and I, we have got 4 grandkids, soon to be 5. And we ordered between us and Abuela. My wife, that's what she goes by, Abuela, but most of the grandkids are too young to say Abuela, so they call her Abby. But so we ordered the book for that, and the grandkids absolutely loved it. Big hit. Big hit.
That's so wonderful to hear. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
It's a California book, so you guys out in West Virginia were enjoying it, or that sounds great.
Yeah, it's really well done. And then I didn't realize it, but my stepdaughter, my wife's daughter, she has read several of your young adult books, and she's kind of a book snob. So if she's reading your books, you must be pretty good.
Oh, that's
must
so
be
wonderful.
Pretty good.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. That's very encouraging. Thanks.
Yeah. So let's start this way. Tell me a little bit about your journey to become an author, because if I remember right, you were teaching school for a little while.
Yeah, I was. I was born in India, and we immigrated here when I was 7 years old with my 2 older sisters. So my sisters are Sonali and Rupali, and I'm Mitali. And we all speak Bengali, which is our language. And so Sonali means gold, Rupali means silver, and Mitali means, kids always guess bronze or platinum, but I tell them I got the best thing because it means friendly. So yeah, so we came out here with my parents. I was 7, and when your parents immigrate from another country, they're working so hard and they're making sacrifices, and so they put us in good schools, and they wanted us to have careers that would really, go somewhere and also help us out financially. And so there's 3 career choices for us. One was we could be engineers, or we could be doctors, or we could be engineers. So telling your immigrant parents that you wanted to be a full-time writer of books for young people was not necessarily their dream come true, but I just always loved reading, and I always wrote for fun, and I never ever thought it would be a full-time career until my second book, which was rejected, I think, by 23 different publishers.
Wow.
And so I kept revising it, and I kept sending it off, and it didn't find a publishing home until 12 years after my first book. So that was 12 years of rejection and 12 years of revision. And it was during that time that I thought, if I'm fighting this hard for something, maybe I better look at it closely and see if it's not the thing that I was meant to do with my life. And so when that second book got accepted and came out, I thought I should really, it felt like some unseen divine being was loving this work for me. And so I thought, if it's being loved that much, then maybe I should love it too and give it a chance. So I really decided at that point that I would leave teaching and become a full-time writer to give it a try. And I'm really grateful I did.
Yeah, I think that's so terrific. What kept you going when you're sending it out and getting either, I'm assuming, either no response or rejected for so long? How do most people, I think, would have just said, okay, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah, that's the mystery, right? I think part of it's the work itself. I love words and I love stories. And even when I was little, I'd play around with words and stories. And so there was just the fun of the craft, just making the story better. I got really good at revising. So I'm no longer scared after that experience of a first draft that's really, really bad. Most of my first drafts are really, really bad, but I'm not scared of it because I know I can make it better. And so there's that wordcraft part of it that's just fun. That kept me going, but I did seek. I mean, I did go on retreats and wonder, there's so many things you can do with your time. Your time is such a gift. And I would keep asking the questions, how am I supposed to serve this world? How am I supposed to serve this planet?
Right.
And stories seemed like it was not in the forefront of my mind that I could serve the world through stories, but I knew that stories had shaped me. As a child, you receive stories like you receive a new language. You learn stories fast, and they shape your heart and your mind. And so
Yes.
I was such an avid reader. I mean, you see it with your grandchildren. What they read matters. And so I knew that it was a powerful thing to do, is to tell stories to children, which stories they hear. And I thought, this could be my place in that great question of, how I think it was Frederick Buechner that said, your great joy meets the world's great need.
Oh, I
And
like that.
you try to find that's your vocation. And so I said, well, so it was a lot of deep soul searching, and also the fun part of it. Yeah.
I love that. Did your parents get to see you publish a book?
Yeah, yes, they did. My mom's still here. My dad, always so proud. He's left this earth, but they were very proud. At the end, I was after my third book, I think my mom set up a Facebook fan page for me. I think there's 22 members, all my uncles and my aunties in India, but she's very proud of everything I do, and she, just posts and brags. And my dad always really was so proud of me, and said, he would say, "Oh, I cannot even write one book, and you have written so many books." There is a rich
Oh, that's
tradition
great.
of art in Bengali culture. As you know, I think we're going to talk about the book Rickshaw Girl, which I tried to show the rich heritage of the arts in my culture of origin. And
Yeah.
so stories and poems, like my dad was a great storyteller, and he had us memorize poetry, and he it was not going to be a full-time career for him. He was an engineer, but he always did love words and the beauty of words. So it's definitely a part of my culture of origin.
I love that. That's so terrific. I think as parents, we're always all we really want is to make sure that our children are doing something that they can earn a living on. That's really the main concern. So then when you say I want to be an author or maybe an actor or something where you're like, oh, I don't know, that seems risky. Then we're like, I don't know if that's what you can. I don't know if you can make a living on that. But then when you do, we're right there.
Oh,
We're,
right.
we're 100%
Absolutely.
behind it.
I feel like that with our boys. We have two boys, and they're going into careers that are really like service oriented. And
Yeah,
so one's going to be a special ed teacher. He's getting his master's. The other's going to be a counselor, a substance abuse counselor. And neither
good
of
for
those are going
them.
to, they're not going to make a boatload of money, but they're going to be doing, and I think about those careers for each of them. And I could just see those, even when they were little, I could see that being a fit for them. From
Yeah,
when, the one with the merciful heart, and the one who always really loved children, especially children who are overlooked and on the margins. That I could just see that it was a fit. So I think that's probably more, every parent's desire is to see your kid in a, like, you want you to see your kids, if they get married, to marry the right person,
that's right.
and you want to see them find a job where that it's a real fit for them, that gives them joy, that will sustain them. Life isn't, every decade seems to have its new challenges. So if you're with a person you love and you're doing something you love, those challenges are
Yeah,
going to
you're
be a lot.
blessed.
Yeah, you're blessed.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're writing, how do you get your story ideas? Do you just carry around a bunch and like at some point I'll write about them, or are you inspired in the moment? How do those come about?
You write, right? You're a writer. Are you a
No,
writer?
I don't. I don't. My son writes.
Your son writes. Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
yeah, and to his credit, he sends me everything he writes, good or bad.
No,
And I think
that's,
he's really talented. But I love reading. I'm a reader, but
yeah.
he's the writer.
So he trusts you enough to do that. I'm pretty private with my work in progress. I don't share it with anyone. It's like this incubation period. So the fact that he sends you his work, that tells me
Yeah,
more about your relationship than actually the fact that you're working together on the podcast. That's a really tender thing, sharing a story that's not yet finished. It's a lot of
I
trust.
think so too. That's what I always say. And I might give him a little bit of feedback, but
Mhm.
most of it, I just love it. I just enjoy kind of the journey. The issue I have with him a lot of times is he writes so much, he bounces around a little bit.
Oh
So he'll
yeah.
stop on one thing, write another, and then he might go back to it and something. And I'm like, I need to know how this story ends.
I used to do that. I have a lot of starts, and then Yeah, but then when it became a career, I had to finish to put
That's
bread on
right.
the table, right? So my idea is that I like to think of a story as like a weave of three different things. Every story, even if it's a song, beautiful storytelling coming out of Nashville, right? So songs, horror stories, movies,
Yeah.
jokes even. And I like to think of these three things that you weave together. And they all start with the letter P. I always tell kids, what three things are in a story that start with the letter P? And so they guess, and then eventually they get to them, which is, you have to have a person, right?
Yeah.
A character, someone you're rooting for, or villains that you want to destroy, or just really characters that are real. So people, and then something has to happen to them, plot, and
Right.
then um, they have to be in a place. So even jokes like, oh, there were these three guys who went in a bar, and one of the guys, tripped and broke it. If you start, every joke kind of starts with that. It's like it has those three elements in them. So I usually start with people. I like my characters. I know them really well. They pop in my mind first, and then I have to think, well, what changes in their life, and that goes to the plot. And then
Yeah.
I moved around so much, and I love being in a place with all five of my senses. So place is pretty important to me. That's why I don't write fantasy. I can't create a fictional, like an imaginative space, because I like being where I am. I like smelling and tasting. And so place comes
I
second, but
like
usually
that.
people come first. I don't have these big plot ideas that come first. It's usually a person that I like to think about, and then that think, well, what happens to that person? And then I go from there.
That seems a little bit different, I think, than what a lot of authors do. Yeah, a lot of times it's more the plot,
Yeah.
and then they'll fill in around that. But I've always been very, the movies, the books that I like, they're very character
Mhm.
driven.
Yeah.
So I like that kind of angle where
Yeah,
you're
I
you're
think, yeah.
creating the people and then worrying about what they're getting into.
Well, I think every writer has strengths, and I'm working on plot. I'm reading books about building tension, and I'm reading
Yeah.
screenwriting books, and I'm trying to make my books more into page turners so that everyone's not sitting around having tea talking about, how beautiful the orchids are for pages and pages. That's not quite the stuff of a good, page turner. But so I'm working on plot, and there's lots of tools to help you with plot. But when it comes to character, I find the movies that like you said, the movies or the Netflix series, they're the shows where you really care about the characters,
Yeah.
even if they're very action oriented, or if you don't care. We've just started another show. My husband and I try to find things to watch together.
Yeah.
It's really tough because he
I know
likes,
that battle.
it's so hard. We're trying so hard. I like these light comedies, these rom-coms, and he likes all those incredibly action oriented things that make me have bad dreams at night. So we're trying, but we tried this show. I won't mention the name so it doesn't get panned on air. But by the second episode, I thought, I don't care about these people. They're all doing terrible things to each other. I'm not rooting for anyone, and I'm just not going to be able to watch the whole series if I
Yeah.
don't actually care about any of these characters. So,
You got to
yeah,
have at least one character that you're
yeah,
rooting.
yes, yeah. And I think people relate to that. The biggest blockbusters, whether it be Star Wars or even the most recent Avatar movie, there's an excellent plot, a good sense of place,
Yeah.
and then you have these characters that you care, that are so memorable. You really want to feel like you know them. They stand out in your mind. So
Yeah.
that's I think it's a strength to be a good character writer. If I can just get past the drinking tea for hours. See, cut.
I used to make fun of Tolkien,
Oh,
and I love Tolkien. But if you've read Lord of the Rings, and especially Fellowship of the Rings, the first 50 to 100 pages, there's a lot of scenery description, and you
yeah.
got to kind of get through that to get to
No,
the
those are my
meaty part.
favorite. Those are my favorite parts of those books. Like when they're all sitting around in a room and making up
Yeah.
poetry. Or there's descriptions of the walks and the bogs and the swamps and things. I love those parts. That's why I didn't like the movies, because I felt like the movie just focused on all the action points.
Well, yeah, of course.
If the mushrooms, when they're foraging for mushrooms in the first part, or they're walking through the wiki window and the great willow. And I mean, I reread those books every year, so I got parts memorized. But I love the parts that are
Well, they're
slow.
great books. The new series on Amazon, I thought, did a little better with the scenery in it is
Oh
beautiful.
yeah. It was very visually gorgeous. You're
Yeah,
right.
it's really really good. Where do you find your artists for your children's books?
Well, in the world of children's books, and I think in the illustrated children's books, I've written novels that only have cover art, and then I've written
Yeah.
picture books which are illustrated very heavily throughout, right? So the picture books are much more of a collaboration as the illustrators equally tell the story. And I don't get to pick, well, in the beginning I didn't get to pick at all because they try to keep you apart because you have different visions. So if the writer's being very like a diva and saying, I don't like that color palette, I think you should use this, or it gets very tricky. So they keep you apart. The art director works with the artist and chooses the artist, and the editor works with the author, and the emails go that way, and then they'll share. And so I
Oh, that's
haven't.
interesting.
I've now at this point in my career, they'll say, "Hey, we've got these three illustrators. Which one do you think?" And I'll get to
Yeah.
pick. But before, I would just have to, that's the mysterious part of collaboration. You just let the other artists have their say. And I've always been so wonderfully surprised. In Between Us and Abuela, which is set on the border between Tijuana and San Diego, it's about a family
Yeah.
separated by the fence, as you know. What she did in that book is Sara Palacios, she added seagulls on every page of that book almost. And the seagulls, there's no fence that stops them. They just go back and forth and back and forth. And
Right.
they show the little girl the way to get her gift. She wants to get this present to her abuelita. And I thought about that. So when I inscribe the books now, I just love those seagulls. And I always inscribe them. I say, love always finds a way. Because
Nice.
I think about the seagulls, how they find a way. So that was added fully by the illustrator. I didn't call and say, I demand that you add seagulls to the story as it will enrich my work. So no, they keep you pretty separate, and that's good because I think it protects the illustrator and the author as well as the story itself. With cover art, it's a little different. For a novel, you get to, for Rickshaw Girl, which is the book that where the movie is based on. The cover art came out, and the first draft of the cover art, and I noticed something that was pretty significant. And I thought, should I die on this hill? Should I fight this battle? Should I be known as that author? And I thought, this is pretty significant. So it's set in Bangladesh. And in Bangladesh, when girls are born, almost every single girl gets their ears pierced as a baby. And so this girl in the book was 11, and she's on the cover, and she didn't have her ears pierced on the cover. And to me, it looked really odd. And so I
Yeah.
said, I've got to say something. So I did. And Jamie Hogan, the beautiful illustrator, because that book has some chalk drawings in them, she went back into every illustration and added the earrings. So I was glad I
That's
spoke
great.
up because it made it more authentic. And I was happy to see the
Yeah,
book.
I love that. When you're sending a children's book in, so when you send it, you're just sending the story, and then they
Yeah.
help you find an illustrator. I didn't realize that. I assumed you
Yeah.
found somebody and sent like
No,
more of
in
a
fact,
completed book in.
yeah, they don't like that. They want to find the artist, and they want to. So you just send a manuscript. You if it's a picture book, you have these spreads, 32 spreads, and you break it up into a story, and you send the words. You may have a few art notes. And when I teach other writers now, and they tend to be really heavy-handed in their art notes, like put a picture of this grandmother wearing this here. And I'll always say, you might want to cut that, leave room for the illustrator. And as you grow as a creative person, you realize it's such a mystery. Every piece of art is a collaboration. Really, even the reader is adding their own meaning, right? You
Yeah,
can't tell the reader, here's what I want you to get out of my
that's
story.
right.
And so everybody's collaborating around the story. It's not really your story. It's really about the art, the reader, the way the book is designed and packaged. It's really a team collaboration. And now even more so with the movie. The movie is like got dozens of people now working on the story that came out of my head initially and is now being worked on by all these people. And they're putting in all their creative um, gifts together. It's kind of magical and mysterious to see it all worked, how all those gifts work together to bring an even more richer story to the screen.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So, Rickshaw Girl, how did the movie part of it come about? So you wrote the book. Did you change it into a screenplay and submit it, or did somebody come to you and say, "Hey, I think I'd like to make this into a movie"?
Yeah, the latter. I wrote the book a long, long time ago. It came out in 2007. It was yet another one of my books that was rejected many, many times by many publishers. And so I'd written two books and I was working on Rickshaw Girl. And I went to it. Your son will appreciate this. I went to the American Library Association conference and they were having signings. And so my second book, Monsoon Summer, was out. And they said, we want you to sign there. And so I sat between these two authors, both men, both famous. And we were all signing together for some reason. And their lines were just going through the back of the conference hall. And I had nobody at my table. Nobody came. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting there thinking, okay. So I pulled out my manuscript, Rickshaw Girl, and I thought, I'll just work on this a little bit. So I was working on it. This lady left one of the lines and came over to me and said, hey, I read Monsoon Summer. What are you working on now? And I said, well, I'm working on Rickshaw Girl, which is a story of a girl growing up in Bangladesh who wants to help her family out by making some money, but she can't figure out why. And she loves to draw. And the woman's face kind of lit up and she said, I'd like to see that. I'm an editor at Charlesbridge. And so send it to me. So I did. And I think they were the 14th publisher that saw it and they agreed to publish it. So it came out of that deep moment of humiliation where and then it came out and it didn't sell very well at first and nobody hardly read it. And then just bit by bit, it was translated into Japanese and Taiwanese and Korean and Bengali, my mother tongue Marathi. It started getting translated. It's a story about duty and honor.
Yeah.
And that really resonated with Asian cultures. And then it came back here, became a stage play at the theater. And then it became now. And then all of a sudden I got a call saying, hey, we want to option this book for a movie. And I thought, what book? What are you talking about? No, you sell an option and you sell it, it's pretty low anyway, but they said we don't have any money yet. We're gonna try to gather the money, but would you be willing to sell us the option for $1? You know, because you have to sell it for something. And I said, oh, well, okay. So I sold the option for $1. And then of course I didn't realize how serious Eric and his wife were about making this into a movie. They love Bangladesh. They love the filmmakers of Bangladesh, and they were serious. And they gathered bit by bit. They got the investments. They got the money. They worked with all these wonderful Bangladeshi creatives. And now, you know, this little peddling rickshaw girl story is now available on streaming on Amazon and on Apple TV, and it's there. And so, yes, they made the story richer and deeper, but it's more Bangladeshi than my book was because I was born in India. My parents are originally from Bangladesh, but you can hear how American I am. So I wrote the book trying to honor my origins, but they took it and they made it even more authentic. And they expanded the story into a much stronger narrative arc. The core of it's still there. A girl who wants to help her family and really loves her art. And it's sad that she's not a boy. You know, that's the core of the story because boys can work and make money and girls couldn't. And so that's still there, but they made it into a far more interesting. And the cinematography, they used colors. The colors of rickshaw art are just bright primary colors, and that's throughout the movie. So it's very exciting to see all of the collaboration. And I think because it's not Hollywood, it's Bangladeshi movie makers. They made it into something magically better than I could have ever dreamed because it's so much true. It's true to the culture. Yeah.
We watched it over the weekend.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
so
here in the studio, we've got room for about 20 people, but we had about 10 and all couples. But so you've got this group of people that were born and raised here in West Virginia. You know, so this is maybe a little different movie than a lot of them had seen before. Absolutely loved it. And the thing I think that everybody really enjoyed was the collars. It was so colorful. And that really struck them. And then, you know, the themes are kind of universal. You know, so you can kind of get involved. And we really enjoyed the girl.
Yeah, Naeem.
She was so good.
Yeah,
it was so good. So such a good movie. I'm like, well, if the movie's this good, we need to read the book.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, usually I do a lot of these podcast interviews and nobody ever watches the movie, but you're the first one. That means so much.
Yeah, we try to make it when I have somebody on, we try to turn it into something. So we invite friends
Amazing.
and family over, and let's just, we make it into a date night.
That's
So that
fantastic.
was,
That
so
just
yeah,
makes me so happy to picture all these couples holding hands and eating popcorn in West Virginia watching Rickshaw Girl.
yeah,
That's
it was good, and it was emotional. It's an
yeah,
emotional
they
movie.
were.
So that was, it was a good date movie.
Oh yeah, that's right. You got to kind of cuddle up and comfort each other. Yeah, no, that's, and I think that there's definitely a deep Bangladeshi sensibility. It's a very emotional culture, and my
Yeah,
dad was a crier and a laugher and just always wore his heart on the sleeve. So that's definitely part of the movie too. It is an emotional movie. And I'm so proud of them all. It feels like, because when I gave up the option, I didn't have any creative input into the movie. I didn't even see it until it was fully screened. And but what they did was just they really honored both the filmmaker Amitav Reza Chaudhary and myself. We both lost our fathers in the course
oh
of making this movie.
yeah,
And so the father's blessing, both of our fathers blessed our art, gave us their blessing about being artists. And I think that was deeply important to Amitav Reza to show that in the movie, that this
yes,
father really championed his daughter's art and wanted her to thrive as an artist. And that happened with me and my Baba, and also Amitav Reza and his dad. So in that sense, it's really meaningful to see the movie from when you understand that
yeah, I
we both.
love that. It has to be satisfying to see something that you created turned into something else, something even more visual. I would love that.
It's amazing. And you create a character. Naima's pretty much the same kind of character. I invented her. I was living in Boston at the time. And she came to me in my head when I was sitting by the fire on a cold winter's night. I thought, Naima. And she just came to life in my head. And then to see that, I was in Bangladesh doing interviews for the movie. And Novera Rahman, the actor, is sitting beside me. And she's so adorable and cute and vivacious. And I kept looking over at her and thinking, hey, I invented you. She, wait a minute. Who, wait, that's, yeah, she's just a beautifully, she beautifully embodies that character of Naima in a way that's, like I said, it's kind of magical. Yeah. And a lot of people write a long time and don't get to see this happen, this collaboration around a story that you create into something more accessible to lots of
Yeah,
people, the vibrancy of film. And so yeah, and the fact again that it's not, it's a low budget and made all by not, there's not by the Hollywood machine, but by these other
right.
people who love film just as deeply as movie makers here. And that too is very special, being a person who is an immigrant, to have it go back to my place of origin and be made there. It's very beautiful on many fronts for me. And yeah, it's time to retire now. My creative career has reached the high. This is my farewell song on the
That's
Michael
right.
Walsh.
Was it difficult giving up control over something that you created?
No, because it was so authentic to the culture. But
Yeah.
yes, when I saw the film, there were a couple of points where I thought, oh, that didn't happen. Oh, that. And I kind of had to get over myself a couple of
Yeah.
times because my story is just simpler and for younger kids. And there was some grittiness to this movie that
Yeah, there
um
was.
yeah, and that's okay. They, like I said, I think they layered it. It's like become gone from 2D to 4D or something.
Yeah.
And so I think if Hollywood had made it, which I might be a richer woman today if Hollywood had made it, but I think it would have been so not authentic.
Yeah.
This is a movie about a Bangladeshi Muslim girl, and this was made by people who grew up in that context, who share that heritage, and that's very important to me. So,
Yeah,
um,
that's terrific. I wanted to ask you about Steeped in Stories.
oh, wow, you've
What
done a
what
deep dive into Mitali Perkins' writing
well,
life.
yeah, I wanted because this one kind of interested me, but talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind, for just real
Thank
quick.
you.
What
Yes,
is that one about? Because I think that one's kind of a neat idea.
it is a book that is written for adults, readers like myself, who love classic books. I grew up reading. I wandered the libraries. I found
Yeah,
my
me
way to
too.
stories like The Lord of the Rings, like the Narnia books, like Little Women and Secret
Yeah.
Garden. all these books that I loved, and I reread them every year, and they deeply formed me when it came to the virtues and the kinds of person I wanted to be. It was
Yeah.
really, yeah, I feel like those authors were like my spiritual mothers and fathers, and or uncles and aunties, as I call them in that book. And so I grew up steeped in stories, but just like every book is shaped by the era, the books we're creating today are shaped by our era and our
That's
time
right.
and place in history. And so those books also were shaped by bygone eras that had some problematic things in them, like The Secret Garden, which I'm rereading again right now because it's almost spring here, and I reread it every spring. It talks about Indian people being like pigs. That's the word that's used there. It's like heathens, and
Right.
and I remember as a little girl reading it as an Indian, thinking, what? You know, being kind of taken aback that I was being portrayed, my race was being portrayed like that. But of
Right.
course, I love the story, and I still love the story. So in Steeped in Stories, I asked the question, what do we do with flawed books? Do we just ban them altogether? Do we remove them from our, like the Little House on the Prairie books have gotten a lot of fire because of the way
Yeah.
they were people's. And so some people would say, get rid of them. But I'm never one that says get rid of a story. I'm not scared of a story because I was a multi-storied child. I read freely, but I read a lot. And when you read a
Right.
lot, the stories moderate each other. They one story doesn't have total power over who you are, what you are as an Indian. I had my dad's stories. He was telling stories about our culture of origin, and they were brilliant stories. And then I had Secret Garden and all kinds of different stories. So because she was being called a native was being called, a daughter of a pig, I didn't say, oh, that's me, I'm a daughter of a pig. Let me leave with my tail between my legs. I knew who I was as a Bengali person because of all the stories that my dad had told
That's
us.
right.
So in that book, I talk about the power of a multi-storied child, and I talk about not being scared of books, but being the goal being that every child would be multi-storied, and that classics, just like contemporary books, are flawed because we're all flawed. And so
That's
the
right.
key, just the key is to understand that and to be able to notice the flaws and receive the good in every story. And so it was really a work of forgiveness for me, about forgiving those uncles and aunties, even though they were, I love them. I still like, Uncle Clive Staples is I love him. He me about Aslan, so
Yeah.
I um I will always owe a debt to those great writers, and I still reread them, but I know they were trapped in their era, just as I am trapped in my era. If any of my work lasts until my great-grandchildren um find them in an attic somewhere, I know they're gonna read my work and say, what was great-great-grandma thinking? What was wrong with her? What, this.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring it up because I thought it's such a great idea because that I think that's the mistake as a society that we kind of make is we find the flaw and then just want to get rid of it. And I've never thought that was the right solution. So I was really interested that
Yeah, it
you were
can't
kind of
be.
looking at it a little different.
It can't be that solution. We can't sit in judgment over bygone eras because we're blind. We have blinders ourselves,
That's
right?
right.
And so the key to raising a good reader is like your grandchildren, who I'm sure are read widely too, as well as when they get to the place where they read
Yeah.
themselves. They're going to be multi-storied children, and so stories will not have power over them. They will have power over stories. And
Yes.
that's the goal for every child, right? Not just our own children or grandchildren. And so I go around the country talking about the power of a multi-storied child. I'm heading to Wisconsin and next weekend and speaking at a reading association literacy conference, and I'm talking about Steeped in Stories, the power of a multi-storied child. And yeah, it seems to be missing in the discussion that we don't have to be afraid of stories,
That's
that
right.
all stories are flawed, and the key is being multi-storied. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mitali, thank you so much. This has been, I could keep you busy all night, but I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. But this has been so much fun and congratulations on the movie and
Thank
your
you. It means so
continued
much to
success as an
me.
author. You got to come back.
I'd love to. And thank you again for being an exemplary host in such preparation, and that you guys watched the movie on the date night and that you read my book to your grandchildren. That is above and beyond the usual podcast host. So kudos to your son and yourself for setting such a high standard for your
Well,
guests.
it helps that you're really talented.
Oh, that's so well, that's nice. I'll share that with my mom, and she can share that with all of her Facebook
Oh
friends.
yeah. Yeah. You tell mom she did a good job.
I will tell her. Thank you so much. Say hi to your friend for me.
Oh, I totally will. Before I let you go, I know we can see Rickshaw Girl pretty much anywhere. It's streaming everywhere now. Where can we find you on social media?
Oh, great question. So I am the only Mitali Perkins on the planet Earth. There's no other combination of those two names. If you Google Mitali, Mitali, or anything kind of remotely near that with the word Perkins, you'll find me. Or if you just, and I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. I love interacting with people. I really enjoy that. So come find me, drop by and let me know what you thought about the movie. The movie you can find at rickshawgirlmovie.com, and it'll lead you to all the places it streams. And yeah, so find me online and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, terrific. Well, okay, Mitali, make sure you come back and see us again.
Oh, I'd love that, Michael. Thanks again.
You're so welcome. Okay, hold on. Those of you that have watched the podcast or listened to the podcast over the last few years, you know I am a lover of books, and I really enjoy having authors on the show. I think they're so creative, and I'm so interested in the process that they go through to write a book. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that that Brett writes, and I think he's so talented, and just so I tend to take an interest in that. Mitali Perkins, absolutely incredible writer. She's got, we talked about a few of them, but she has got a ton of books, young adult and children's books, adult books, really, really good. So look her up. She's really easy to find. I found the website really easy. She's on Amazon. I think I said that we had ordered between us and Abuela. Emily goes by Abuela, Abby, with the grandkids. So when I saw that she had a book with that in the title, we had to have that one. So check her out. Really good books, and they're kind of multicultural, so they're good books to expose children to different cultures. I think that's really important. So try that. Rickshaw Girl. I haven't read the book yet. I'm going to, because I love the movie. But you can find the movie anywhere right now. It's out there. It's really good. It's kind of emotional, so prepare yourself for that. But it's also uplifting, fun, and just beautiful, just colorful, fun to watch. So do yourself a favor and support that movie. Watch it. Good date movie. It's got my stamp of approval. Thank you guys so much for tuning in again this week. I absolutely love having creative people on the podcast. It's just the best. If you're finding us for the first time and you enjoyed it, we could use your support. And there's a couple ways you can do that. If you prefer to watch, we're on YouTube, MeisterCon Pod. All we ask is that you hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out, helps us to promote the podcast, to bring on guests. It really does make a difference. Just hit that subscribe button. It's free. We won't wear you out with a bunch of stuff coming your way, but it will give you access to all of our interviews in the video form. If you're listening, same thing. Whatever podcast platform you're listening on, just subscribe. That helps us out. You can find today we posted episode 514, which, if you're familiar with podcasts, that's a lot. That's a lot of episodes. We're really proud of that. You can watch or listen to all of those on our website, meistercon.com. That'll also let you know if we're doing anything in studio, like watching Rickshaw Girl, if we're going on location, if we're covering a convention, whatever we have going on, that'll be on the website, meistercon.com. Thank you guys so much for tuning in again this week. Definitely don't take you for granted. Until next time, bye, everybody.